It was September 16th, 1810, and a Roman Catholic priest was standing outside his church in the small town of Dolores, Mexico. He had ordered the church bells to be rung and had gathered his congregation, yet he was not there to preach the word of the Lord. He was there to convince the crowd to revolt against the Spanish in Mexico, saying, "My children, a new dispensation comes to us today. Will you receive it? Will you free yourselves? Will you recover the land stolen 300 years ago from your forefathers by the hated Spaniards? We must act at once. Will you defend your religion and your rights as true patriots? Long live Our Lady Guadalupe. Death to bad government. Death to concubines." The crowd cheered their support for the priest, and this event was the spark needed to begin the Mexican War of Independence, and soon this war would reach the plains of Texas. When Father Miguel Hidalgo y Costilla began his revolt in September 1810, the people living in Texas at the time were divided on whether to support the revolution or to remain loyal to the new French monarch of Spain. Father Hidalgo hoped to bring the northern provinces of Mexico, including Texas, into his revolution, and hopefully gain the support from the United States. He began to send spies into Texas to gather support for the revolution. However, when the Spanish governor of Texas, Manuel Maria de Salcedo, discovered two of Hidalgo's revolutionary agents working among his troops, Salcedo decided to take action. On January 2, 1811, he summoned all 300 garrison troops in San Antonio and informed them that they would be traveling to the Rio Grande to more effectively defend the province. However, he was aware that the varsal authorities could not spare troops to defend Texas. He tried to muster his men to crush the rebellion on the Rio Grande, but both the alcaldes and the garrison troops were unhappy with this prospect, and many began to believe that Salcedo was planning to abandon Texas. Within the next several days, Coahuila surrendered to the rebels, and on January 15th, the rebels launched an attempt to seize the Texas government. However, the plot was discovered and the conspirators were arrested. Salcedo then canceled his orders to send troops to the Rio Grande so that they could instead protect the capital. He also issued a declaration to the citizens of San Antonio to warn them that helping the rebels was treason. On January 21, 1811, a retired militia captain from Nuevo Santander named Juan Bautista de las Casas led a group of army sergeants at Presidio San Antonio de Bayar and staged a coup d'etat in San Antonio. They would overthrow Governor Salcedo and arrest him the next day, along with a handful of those loyal to him. The Spanish officers were humiliated in front of the town before being transferred to Monclova and Coahuila. The rebel forces declared themselves against the government by European-born Spaniards in accordance with Hidalgo's declaration, and Casas ordered the arrests of all Spaniards in the province and the confiscation of their property. The revolutionary leadership of Coahuila were impressed with Casas' success and appointed him the interim governor of Texas, all while Casas ordered Antonio Sáenz and alcalde Galvino Delgado to lead a force of 80 men and establish a revolutionary leadership in Nacogdoches. They would arrive on February 1st of that year, where there was little resistance to the rebels. They arrested the Presidio commander and also began arresting Spaniards, confiscating property, and erecting a provisional government before returning to San Antonio with prisoners. When the expedition returned to San Antonio, Casas arrested Sáenz for pocketing some of the confiscated wealth. However, the charges were later dropped and Sáenz was released, but neither of the two men received credit for their actions. The rest of Texas was quickly revolutionized, and it seemed like Hidalgo's plan was working. However, during this time, Hidalgo's army was in full retreat into northern Mexico, and many revolutionaries in Texas were unhappy with Casas' rule as governor and made common cause with the remaining royalists. Both groups found a leader in Lieutenant Colonel Juan Manuel Zambrano, a scandalous churchman and San Antonio native. Zambrano had retired to his ranch some miles out of San Fernando and had kept himself informed on everything going on in the villa. Events soon came to a head when Ignacio Aldama, Hidalgo's ambassador to the United States, arrived in San Antonio. They believed that Aldama would remove Casas from the governorship, but Aldama was there to solicit arms and troops for the revolution. Zambrano and his fellow conspirators, unhappy with this prospect, spread a rumor in town that Aldama was a Napoleonic agent. This fear of the French gave the support Zambrano needed for his counter-revolution, and early on March 2, 1811, the group elected a 12-member governing junta, which represented both the military and the general populace. Zambrano was elected president, and each member of the junta took an oath to religion, the king, and the country, and later that day, Zambrano and his supporters marched on the government house, captured and arrested both Casas and Aldama. Casas, after 39 days as governor of Texas, surrendered without a fight. Zambrano re-established royalist control in the province and sent a messenger to inform those holding Saucedo that the revolution in Texas had failed. During Saucedo's captivity, he had been slowly tempting his captor, Ignacio Elizondo, with promises of a promotion and other rewards if he renounced his revolutionary tendencies, and after receiving Zambrano's message, Elizondo changed sides. Both Saucedo and Elizondo would go on to capture Hidalgo and much of his army at the wells of Bajan, and after their capture, Saucedo accompanied the prisoners to Chihuahua, the headquarters of the Commandant General. On April 26, 1811, the Commandant General appointed Saucedo to be president of a 7-member tribunal to try the revolutionaries, and the men were quickly sentenced to death by firing squad. Casas was sent as a prisoner to Monclova and was imprisoned there for 4 months, where loyalists in Coahuila quickly judged, convicted, and executed the prisoners captured in San Antonio. On August 3, 1811, he was demoted, shot in the back, and beheaded. His body was buried at Monclova, and his head was sent to San Antonio to be publicly displayed on a pole in the military plaza. Saucedo was restored as governor, but Zambrano administered the province until he returned to Texas. Even though both Hidalgo and Casas' revolts were unsuccessful, the thirst for Mexican independence could not be quenched, and revolution would only return to both Mexico and Texas.